Eating something off-plan or unhealthy shouldn't lead to a self-hatred spiral, but if that is your experience, then this video is for you. Hi, my name is Clara, the ExerPsych, and I'm a sport and exercise psychologist and fitness coach who specializes in helping people just like yourself learn to be a lot kinder to themselves when it comes to their relationship with food, to make sure that you don't end up pressing the fuck it button and going from the all or nothing extremes of constant inconsistency, bouncing between self-sabotaging and being completely rigid with yourself all of the time. And in this video, I'm going to be addressing the fact that for so many of you, when you eat something off-plan or that is unhealthy, you automatically feel like a failure, and that instigates a whole barrage of self-hatred, which is perpetuating your all or nothing cycles over and over without even realizing. Why is it important to address this though? I mean, it might seem obvious as I'm talking about it, because if you've experienced that automatic self-hatred, you will know that it is an absolute hellscape and an absolutely hellish headspace to be living in. But as I said in the introduction, you should really be thinking about addressing it, especially if health, fitness, well-being, body composition, physique, performance, fitness, if all of those things are important to you, because without doing that, you're never going to be able to be as consistent as you would want to. And if you are able to force yourself to be consistent, that consistency is going to be far from enjoyable, and eventually you will end up failing, and you will end up pressing the fuck it button, you will end up burning out completely, and it'll be so much harder to get started again with something that is clearly important to you. Now, I'm going to be providing my professional opinion based on my experience, but this might not fit quite with your lived experience. So I really welcome you to give me feedback if your lived experience is different to what I'm describing, but this is what I have seen in my over half a decade of experience doing this work. Those of you who experience an immediate onslaught of self-hatred and self-disgust and self-criticism as a result of eating the tiniest or smallest of things off plan or that your mind perceives to be unhealthy, the reason for that is because at your core, you do not feel good enough. And if you've watched any of my videos, you will know that this is a recurring theme, and it really stands, especially in this context. If you do not feel good enough, it is normal to seek out situations and opportunities that might help us get rid of that feeling, or that might help us compensate for that horrible feeling, especially because when we don't feel good enough, that elicits a feeling of shame. And when we feel ashamed, well, it's a horrible feeling. I don't need to probably describe that to you, but it is known that shame is probably one of the most difficult feelings for humans to experience. So it makes sense that we would be moved to get rid of or numb or push away or compensate for any situation that could potentially trigger that feeling of shame. And because of the society that we live in, where health and fitness and being lean and training hard and eating really healthy and eating really clean and all this shit, because we live in a society that is upheld as a gold standard of behavior, you will be automatically categorized as a good person for doing all those things, even though you could be a total asshole. But because those things are glorified, it makes sense that in experiencing a feeling of not good enough, that our mind would latch on to any type of tangible, objective or outcome that might help us compensate for that feeling. And controlling our food, controlling the way that we look, controlling how much we exercise, controlling our health behaviors, controlling how we present to the world is such a very real and tangible way to be able to do that. So back to the food, your mind, in not feeling good enough, might think, okay, well, I'm going to set myself the expectation of eating really clean and eating really healthy. But that's not necessarily like a clear cut thought that you might have at the forefront of your mind. It's more like a kind of like programming that runs in the background that you may or may not have thought about or contemplated much in the past. But that thought is definitely there, right? And it's coming from this place of not being good enough. I don't feel good enough, therefore I will expect myself and set myself the standard of eating super clean and being mega super ultra healthy, which is all fine and well on paper. However, the moment that you then do not follow protocol, that protocol that was initially established to move away from or to compensate for that feeling of not being good enough, all of those feelings and all that shame is gonna resurface straight away, super mega automatically, right? And that is where that self-criticism comes up. Oh my God, you failed. You see and feel that shame wash over you. It's maybe like a knot in your stomach. You maybe feel like you can't breathe. It's horrendous. It is absolutely horrendous. And so it's understandable that in observing yourself failing and in experiencing that horrible wave of shame as a result of eating something off plan or something unhealthy, that you would be even more determined to not do that again. However, the world that we live in, unless you're in a cave and unless you have complete and utter regimented control over what you do and you never socialize and you never go out or anything like that, unless that is the case, which it isn't for most of us, the world that we live in does not lend itself to never being in contact or being offered food that is categorized as being unhealthy, or something that your mind might categorize as being unhealthy. And so what that means is that inevitably there will come a point in time where you encounter a situation where you do end up eating something that is unhealthy, and in the absence of constantly being able to uphold that super high standard just to avoid experiencing shame, when you do end up eating that thing, could be a biscuit, could be a meal out, could be anything, right? When your mind observes you as eating off plan, because it's already been trying to avoid so much of that shame and pushing it away, and in setting that goal, eventually it'll come a point where your mind goes, fuck it, what's the fucking point? I failed anyway. And that is the problem, because that is the point in which you will decide, understandably so, to press the fuck it button. Because guess what? When you press the fuck it button and go, I don't give a shit anymore, fuck it, I'm just gonna go away and eat whatever I want, then you're removing the goals that you set for yourself to begin with. And so in removing the goals, you no longer have a standard to compare yourself against. And if you don't have a standard to compare yourself against, it's impossible to feel like a failure, because what are you comparing yourself, right? Like, they basically removed the standards. And so it makes sense that you would do that. It makes complete sense that you would do that. However, of course, eventually, because you clearly do care about your health and about your fitness and about your well-being and about your nutrition being of a certain quality, and that is okay, that's not a bad thing at all, but because you care about it, eventually there will come a point in which that, I don't give a shit, well, you will start to care again. You will start to give a shit. And because when you press the fuck it button and self-sabotaged, you ended up doing the opposite of all the things that were important to you, your mind is going to have even more self-directed disgust left over for you as a result of all of those observations of what you have been doing, that regret, the mental add up of the calories, or oh my god, I can't believe I fucking ate all of that, etc, etc, etc. That is going to confirm to your mind that you weren't good enough to begin with. I can't believe I'm so fucking worthless. I'm such a piece of shit. Why did I do that? Clearly I've got no discipline. Clearly I've got no self-control. And because of that, your mind is going to go, right, I've got the solution. Don't eat anything off plan. Only eat healthy food. And so the cycle repeats itself. And so it makes complete and utter sense. I mean, of course, right? When you see it map out like that, it's like, well, yeah, duh. Of course that's going to happen. But if you don't change that, if you don't address that barrage of self-criticism that automatically arises every single time that you eat something off plan, you're going to keep repeating that cycle where you keep feeling like you have to set even higher standards to avoid shame, to avoid that feeling of not being good enough. Eventually that becomes impossible to uphold. When it becomes impossible to uphold, you press the fuck it button and bam, the cycle repeats itself again. And I don't know if this is happening for you every single day. I don't know if this is happening for you every single week. I don't know if you might be on plan for 3 months and then you finish a 12-week show program, you go, you have a wee bit of cake, some biscuits, you feel like a fucking piece of shit and a failure, and then you repeat the cycle again. I don't know how that is showing up for you, but what I do know is that this is significantly problematic, especially if you want to be healthy, if you want to be fit, if you want to take care of yourself and establish long-term sustainable habits that are going to see you through for the rest of your life. And I want you to think about, what is it costing you to not address this problem right now? Because I think that you're probably watching yourself become more and more exasperated, desperate for change, and you're starting to doubt yourself more and more, and you're starting to hate yourself more and more, and that self-criticism is going to do you no fucking good, especially for breaking that cycle. Because this is the thing, if you were to learn and if you were to address that immediate automaticity of negative self-hatred that comes up for you the moment that you eat something off plan, then as a result of eating something off plan, you're not going to feel a ton of shame. When you don't feel a ton of shame, you're not going to have to do things like set these high standards of eating only clean food to prevent yourself from experiencing shame, because there's actually no shame there to experience. And so even when you do observe yourself eating something, or eating in a way very well that maybe doesn't fully align with your values and your goals all of the time, you're not going to end up pressing the fuck it button and either going completely, from being on it to being completely off it, because you're much better able to manage those difficult feelings that come up, recognize that you're not a failure and that you're not someone that merits being hated on for eating something unhealthy. And as a result of that, you're going to be far less likely to have the need to remove those standards that are creating that kind of comparison gap. And when you're not then removing the standards, then you're much more likely to almost like feel invited to move towards the values and the goals that are important to you, which in this case might constitute eating in a more balanced way more often than not, and not pressing the fucking button, and not binging, and not hating on yourself for eating a packet of crisps or having a couple of biscuits, for going out for a meal with a loved one. And I'll say this now because I feel like it's important to say this, but there's a lot of horrible, awful people who are doing atrocious, disgusting, abhorrent things across the world, and eating a biscuit does not make you one of them, and so you do not deserve that level of self-hatred that you're subjecting yourself to. It's completely and utterly unfair and unjustified, even though I know that your mind might be wanting to fight against me as I say that. So what can you do about it? Obviously this is quite a complex thing to be working with, and so if you do feel like you need a bit more one-to-one support, you can head to the description under the video and click the link to work with me. But if you want to start this process of not unleashing a barrage of self-hatred onto yourself every single time you have something that is small off plan, I want you to think about this analogy, and I have used it in a previous video, but I want you to imagine yourself walking down the street with your best friend, and you point out to your best friend that their shoelaces are undone and that they should probably tie them up or they will fall. Your friend should just ignore you, and 5 minutes later they end up falling. The last thing you probably do is tell them when they're on the floor that they're fucking stupid and I can't fucking believe you did that. How dare you? I'm so embarrassed. Oh my fucking god, you're so dumb, you're so worthless. You'd never say that to them. What you also wouldn't do would be to help them up and ignore the fact that they didn't take your advice on board and that they ended up falling because of it. What you'd probably do would be to help them up and say, hey buddy, mate, I told you that your shoelaces were undone. You should probably tie them up. That's why you fell. So please, can you do that for me? Because I don't want you to fall. That's the difference. It's the fact that you're helping them and you're telling them what they should have done and said because you give a shit. And you are the same, and you can apply that type of thinking to yourself. If you observe yourself eating something that you would have preferred not to eat, you can have that conversation with yourself without being a total ass. You can just say to yourself, okay, that wasn't ideal, that wasn't my preferred choice in that particular moment, but that's okay. Why was not my preferred choice in that moment? Okay, maybe I am trying to focus a bit more on eating more whole foods. Maybe I'm trying to focus a bit more on making sure that I'm eating at home. Maybe I'm trying to spend less money. Maybe I'm trying to address something around my body composition. Maybe I'm trying to intentionally lose weight. Whatever it is, you can observe yourself fucking up, and instead of being absolutely disgusting to yourself, turn around and say, okay, look, that wasn't ideal, but this is what I'd like us to do instead. You don't even have to try and be nice. You can be neutral, and that will make a difference, because the less you shame yourself for fucking up, the less you shame yourself for having something bad, having something off plan, whatever that might be, the less likely you are then to reinforce that circle and to remain stuck in that never-ending, self-sabotaging, all or nothing loop that has kept you stuck for I don't even know how many years. What I do know is that it's been too many years, and I want you to be able to change that straight away. So give that a go, and if you want to keep my advice in your pocket, then I want you to go back into the description, click on the self-sabotage stopper, and that will send you my free 5-minute toolbox that you can keep screenshotted onto your phone that will help you in those moments where you are attacking yourself. Find a way to ground yourself, find a way to at least neutralize some of that self-criticism, and find over time different ways to practice breaking that cycle by stopping the self-hatred and focusing on self-compassion. I hope that you found this video useful. As always, if you did, make sure that you like the video and that you subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss out on any future videos. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one.